Hello and how's it, world? Welcome back to the show. If you're new, this is Moving the Needle podcast. I'm Andrew Neethling. I'll be your host, a former downhill mountain bike racer. But this is not about me. I've honestly said it before. I've had legends on the show. I've had royalty, but this is a bit of both. It's such an honor to have a person that I don't think any other mountain bike has had somewhat of 500 covers. They've moved to another country and been a huge success. They've met the president of America. They've played themselves in a mainstream American TV show. And the list goes on. I mean, the bio was so long, I actually just couldn't read it all because I want to get to know no other than HANS No Way Ray, an official legend of mountain biking. You know, that word gets thrown around pretty loosely sometimes, but I think you've really earned that space in the mountain bike world for what you've done and paved the way. How are we doing, Hans? What an honor.
I'm doing great, Needle. Thanks for having me on the show and thanks for the kind words.
Could you have ever imagined that your life would have turned out this way?
Oh yeah, I planned it all along. No, just
Yeah,
kidding. I
yeah.
had no idea, man. I've been yeah, no idea. My wildest dreams, even since I've been 16 years old, I've been saying I'm gonna do this another year or two. And now I'm knocking at 57 and I'm still saying the same thing.
I wasn't gonna ask, but you've dropped it. Knocking on 57, still riding bikes, still sponsored, still promoting brands, but as well as from what I can tell, still enjoying two wheels. It doesn't seem like you're just doing it for the sake of it. Like it seems like you're still challenging yourself and enjoying the rush that bikes brings us, even though maybe with your age, certainly certain things are not as easy as they used to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, things change and physically and also your goals, but you always need to have the passion in this line of work. Otherwise, you're in the wrong job and you're not be able to do a good job. Of course, there comes downtime sometimes when you feel a little bit less enthusiastic, but I think that's how it is with everything in life and with every job. But overall, I love it and I kind of even rediscovered the love of the sport, thanks, I admit it, I'm into e-bikes and I love them. And I think they great thing. They came at a good time for me. I haven't given up my analog bikes, so I'm still riding those too. But the e-bikes kind of brought that inner 14-year-old kid out of me again that just wants to go out and ride and play and try see where the next frontier might be.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. The guys in the shop said, we haven't seen you this excited about a new bike. And I said, well, I'm definitely spoiled and I'm grateful. But, you know, sometimes it's a new year model. So it's a new colorway and we're making these small changes. But I got Scott's Lumen, which is, a lesser powered e-bike, but the weight is so light. And I didn't even let them finish tightening half the bolts. I was out the back of the shop up on the trails. So I know what you mean. It is sort of a different, it's bikes, but it's like a different genre. And if you've been doing it so long, as maybe a little bit me, but you even more, of course, it's going to be some days it's mundane, right? It's like you can't tell me a doctor's still passionate about going into the surgery, after 30, 40 years,
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like, when like you in the past for me, because I was never an endurance guy, mountain biking was a little bit too much of that in order to do it on the level I want to do it. I wanted to rather have fun, and that sometimes came a bit short. And I think this is like it balances it out into the direction that I kind of like to see it. I was always into technical riding, into playing around, into having fun, not taking it too seriously. Even back in the early 90s, when everything and everybody was about stopwatches and Lycra, I would I wanted to have fun with it and start doing videos outside of competitions, and so so I think the e-bike kind of serves that way for me and many others.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have share some similarities. I come from a downhill side, and you came from this trials, experimental, creative background, and probably slogging up a 2 hour climb to do a bit of technical descent. Like you say, you just want to do the technical descent. But I mean, for people that have been literally living under a rock, or maybe they're very young, obviously that must be a bit different for you. You know, like us that have been in the industry a long time know exactly who you are, what you've done, or most of what you've done. Till I read that bio. But maybe we can take like a little bit down memory lane. So you come from a trials background, and growing up, was that sport bigger in Germany's? And I know you've got a Swiss parent as well, and you've taken like you have a Swiss passport. But was
Yeah,
the sport bigger there than it was, say, in the States back in the day? Trials
yeah,
mountain biking per se.
yeah. Because trials is actually a European sport, unlike BMX and mountain biking. So trials kind of started in Europe alongside motorcycle trials competition, and it eventually stood on its own feet. And it was mainly performed in the, I mean, it started as early as the 70s, but it was mainly performed in the 80s and 90s on 20-inch bikes in Europe. And in the mid 80s, this American trials rider, Kevin Norton, he came over, he was national champ, and he was sponsored. We were all amateurs in Europe, you know. I mean, the top riders might have gotten the free bike from a shop or distributor, and some of us made some pocket money doing trial shows at the local car dealership or so. But it wasn't. And this American rider, he was full on sponsored by BMX companies and kitted out, and he wasn't even in the top 30. But he was a super cool guy, and he wanted to make trials big in America. And he told me one of those visits, Hans, there's a new sport in America. It's called mountain biking. And in the early mountain bike races, they had these stage races, and every rider had to do the downhill, cross country, and the trials competition on the same 26-inch stock mountain bike. And so the level in Europe was much higher, and he wanted me to come over and show them that. And they had a small group of riders who in America who also would ride the 20-inch things, and they would look up and over to the Europeans. And when I came over, it was even before the boom really kicked off, but mountain biking was kind of already flourishing, and it was at the right time, at the right place. And Kevin Norton introduced me to everything and everybody. And before I knew it, I was like, maybe I'll stay a little bit longer than these initial couple of months I wanted to come.
Yeah, it's fascinating reading into some of those things. I know I saw some of the amazing ads and videos you've done, like on the freeway and the 405 in California, and you had that. I guess it was a Swatch ad where you jumped over a taxi, but like you obviously are earning no money. You get invited over to America. What's the thought process when you're like, oh, I guess I'll stay a little bit longer? Because we were joking off air, which I should have recorded, was, I think most people are winging it and think other people maybe have it all figured out, but we're all just winging it at certain levels.
Yeah, that is true, and you never really know. I learned that a while ago, and it's such a good phrase, the winging it thing, because I think everybody in the industry is, especially now, and you often feel like you're the only one, but I think everybody is, not just the sponsored riders. I think even the sponsors are winging it, and the media are winging it, and the promoters are winging it even more often. So, but but no, it's initially Kevin, like he wanted to hook me up right away with like a bike company, and he was sponsored at the time by Haro, and so he figured, hey, it would be so cool if GT also had a trials bike, and a few other mountain bike brands had already a trials bike, and he really wanted the sport to grow. And so he introduced me to them. He introduced me to the Laguna Rats, one of the oldest mountain bike club in the world, that who taught me to be a real mountain biker. But one of those days, after like I was only 2 weeks in America, he got a phone call and he said, hey, it's Swatch on the phone. They want us to be in New York this afternoon. We were in Los Angeles. Apparently tickets are at the airport. So we packed the bikes, drive to LAX, fly to New York, and this famous advertisement of me jumping over a taxi cab on Broadway. And we started talking to the Swatch people, and Swatch were the original supporter, mainstream company that supported extreme sports way before Red Bull. Red Bull copied Swatch when they first started out, and then of course later they took it to a whole different level. And But Swatch at the time, besides the watches, they did also clothing. And when we did the photo shoot, I said, hey, if you want, I can wear your clothing. And this was like sweatpants and loose cut stuff, not Lycra stuff. So it was kind of already streetwear before streetwear even hit BMX freestyle. And I said, if you want to sponsor me, like I can wear your stuff for $500 a month or so. And then like they sent me a contract a few weeks later, and it was $1,000 a month. And that's something that never ever happened to me again in my career, that somebody gave me twice as much than I asked for. But Swatch also had these ideas of sending me all over the country to these shopping malls and doing shows together with skateboarders. I would tour with Rodney Mullen and with Ross Cobb and with all these people.
And that
but
was
mainly
Swatch's idea. Like they kind of said, we're doing this anyway in action sports, like join them.
Well, they did a PR tour to go to all the shopping malls and do a promotion there in the parking lot in front of a Macy's or a department store with us. And sometimes they had a little fashion show etched on, and Rodney, and they had the local kids would all come out with their skateboards. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. This could be a good way for me to not only see America, learn the language, but I was about to study marketing in Europe. I started to go to the university. I took one semester, took a vacation semester, and never went back. But the way I made me feel comfortable with it, I asked Swatch if I could do an internship while I come back to America. And they had no idea what I was talking about, but they said, yeah, you can do that. So that gave me the confidence to leave my school behind and come back to America. And then they had a lot of work for me. And I also, in the meantime, I signed with GT up. That was 36 years ago, and I'm still with them to this day. And the Swatch sponsorship lasted also almost 20 years. And and then a few years later, this was all in 87, 88. And then in the early 90s, the mountain bike boom really kicked in. And that's when the golden years of mountain biking started. And we had all these factory teams and big events, and stuff got televised, and big sponsors came into the sport. And but that was a few years later.
And in a crazy way, do you think it was just right place, right time? And obviously saying yes to these opportunities. And I don't want to gloss over the part where you spent your childhood practicing and getting these skills. Like, you're not one of the legend of the sports and being sponsored for so long from one brand, from being good at business. You have to be good at your skill as well. But I mean, looking back, you've just mentioned winging it, and I think it comes with experience, realizing, shucks, we're all kind of winging it. And if you have that understanding, it makes you feel a little calmer, I guess. But for sure, that was right place, right time to be in America.
Yeah.
And you go to the Swatch thing, but you see a little opportunity where I can wear your gear.
Yeah, there was definitely right time, right place. But I think a lot of people in life get opportunities, but they often don't jump on them because they're afraid, and they're so new or crazy, or they have other stuff going on, or they're slacking with their responses. And I was at the right time at the right place, but I also knew how to grab an opportunity, and then also to make it work and last. Maybe I had always a marketing sense, and I was always trying to find ways to make the sponsors happy, because I knew if the sponsor's happy, then I would be taken care of too, hopefully. And so I kind of understood early on that it was a business. People weren't just giving me money for, ultimately Swatch wanted to sell more watches, or GT wanted to sell more bikes. And I tried to make myself, you had to get creative a little bit. Like, I got also mixed in with the whole BMX freestyle team. GT was big at that. They had a huge summer tour going on with 4 different teams all over the world, really, but mainly in the US, touring. And it was all a bunch of young kids, great riders. And they asked me, hey, do you want to join the summer tour? And it was like driving in a van, like 12 hours each day from one bike shop to the next, sleeping in one motel, the 6th room, like eating out of the car. And they offered me like $80 a day. And I was like, $80 a day? I got more than that in Germany from a car dealership if I would do a trial show, it's like I cannot afford to not go to college or university and all that. So I kind of sometimes did shows with them, but I started doing my own stuff. So I would contact the local trade show in LA or whatever, San Diego, and say, hey, I can do a trial show right here in the middle of your thing if you set up a course and let me hang up some banners. And then I would go to 5 different sponsors and tell them each, hey, if you give me $100, I hang up your banner in the middle of this event. Where if they would have been a sponsor of the event, they would have paid 2,000-3,000, and I got them a banner here, and I was the attraction with my trial show, and the local TV would film me, and it was a lot more work for me to do all that and hang up the banners. But I walked home with $500-$600 at the end of the weekend or the week or the day. I mean, and so you had to become creative. That's my point, and find ways to make everybody happy. And in this case, the promoter was stoked I came for free. The spectators were stoked. The media was stoked. There was some action going on, and the sponsors were stoked. And ultimately, I was stoked.
Yeah, but that's incredible. That's like basically the a modern day content creation. You know, you're making the content, i.e., the show, and then you're selling it back to the sponsors, and it's such a win-win. And in today's day and age, that would be building up a YouTube channel, right, or building up your Instagram, and then offering these tags and things that we do anyway, right? Like adding the value. But where do you think this came from? Just naturally, you had a marketing sense? I mean, you said you were going to study marketing, but where did you get those thought processes? Because my dad taught me, you know, sponsorship is a two-way street. And we would do CVs at the end of the year and lots of thank yous and things like that. So luckily it was handed down to me a bit, and I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, but not everyone is taught that or and sees that, especially if you're young and really good at your trade. Often you just think like people are giving me stuff because of whatever, that you don't understand. Like you've got to always try provide value back.
I would like listen to other people's scenarios in other sports usually, and I would keep my eyes and ears open, and a lot of things I would hear and learn and then forgot that where I learned it from. Like it happens to so many of us, like you hear a good idea and the next thing you go like, wow, that is an excellent idea, but you already forgot who gave it to you. And I'm sure I'm guilty of that too, but yeah, I would like just try to be creative. And like you say, it hasn't really changed much nowadays. You might go to a sponsor and say, hey, I want to do a video, it's going to cost X amount, and the sponsor is going to go like, I don't have that money right now, there's too many people eating from the cake as it is, we don't, so then you might have to get creative and do the same thing I did back then. Go to 5 different sponsors, have them all chip in a fifth, and then you might still have a video and everybody is happy again, and everybody, so yeah, I would look to other sports. Like for example, there came the point, this was long before the word free ride was introduced into mountain biking. It came from snowboarding, obviously, but long before that, I would do stuff with extreme skiers, and I watched their movies, and I worked with some extreme ski filmmakers. And I remember thinking one day, going, oh, I don't want to be a mountain bike racer anymore. I want to be an extreme mountain biker, because the skiers called themselves extreme skiers. So in the early days, we called free riding extreme mountain biking, and we started doing, but I learned from the skiers how they did it and how they applied it, and how, oh, wow, there's guys outside the World Cup circuit. I grew up around ski races, like watching them in Europe. They were on TV all the time, and it was huge, and that's all I knew about skiing. And then all of a sudden I see these guys jumping off cliffs and doing crazy stuff, and having this whole lifestyle with fun and stuff, and I wanted to kind of adapt that. And that's kind of where I took my very first videos back in the day. And that was also at the time when there wasn't any videos, there wasn't even internet, and there was certainly no YouTube. We did VHS tapes, and because there was so few of them, or there was none really, they were really spreading like wildfire. And that really was the point. And that was around 91 when my career took off, because there was a few times between my arrival in 87 and then where I almost went back home. There was pressure also from the parents, and like, hey, what are you going to do when this is all over, and then you don't have an education and all this, and nobody could imagine to make money with riding a bicycle. So I had to fight against all these stigmas, but I also, um, yeah. So there was all kinds of little things you had to deal with at the time, and but often, yeah, you learn from other sports.
What were those conversations like with your parents? It must be tough for them, especially not being close to you if they're in another foreign country. And there isn't the internet to show them every day how successful you are or could be. What were those conversations like?
Well, they knew I was good in my sport, but they also knew the sport was very small, and there was no action sports, professional action sport athlete yet, especially not any they would have heard of in Germany, and or Switzerland at the time where they lived. But yeah, they had the same doubts, like, and they were smart. You have to think long run, and that still applies today. Even though if you're really fast downhiller, your career can be very short unless you understand the whole business and I mean, the not only winning races but have longevity, having sponsors, dealing with the sponsor, so they want to work with you and all this and and then like maybe evolve into something else after your racing days are over, like so many guys do now. But all those examples weren't really there, and people would just go like, and then what you gonna do when you're 26 or 7? You gonna work at the gas station for the rest of your life, or you gonna, like, you should really get your education nailed in, or your I didn't even do an apprenticeship, which is very common in Europe, and I'm actually glad I didn't, because if I would have gotten one, because I couldn't get one, and if I would have gotten one, I probably would have never came to America for that initial visit, and I would be just like, like living probably a pretty normal life over in Germany now.
Yeah, but it's crazy like that. These the one door closes. You might have been bummed at the time, and then you say yes to these other things. But looking back, I mean, you've done some crazy trips. I mean, are there some that stand out? Just going through that bio and some of the unique first things you've done, or where the bike has taken you. What's some of the unique ones that pop to mind?
Yeah, so initially it was all about trials competition. Then I started doing some mountain bike racing. I did even some downhills and slaloms, but then I started, and I at the whole time I always did a lot of trial shows, and my stage was very international. Especially GT would send me all over the world to events and stuff. And then I started doing the videos and did video productions, and slowly I evolved into this adventure team, and I started the HANS adventure team, and I would go on these expeditions and places where nobody had been before, and there was places like that back then, not, unlike now where you
Yeah.
cannot find the new spot on the map. There was so many countries where I was the first international mountain biker to go visit, or the first guy to try to traverse a certain mountain or descend a certain thing, or so. And I always tried to tie in a little bit of a storyline that was more than just biking, to get a little mainstream appeal. But also my own hobbies were like these mysteries and archaeologies and mystical sites, like Machu Picchu or the pyramids, and I got to check all these things off my bucket list in the process while going there, doing films and usually TV documentaries. We did stories for the magazines, and back then it was all about print magazines basically, and a little bit of videos, DVDs, and there was still not really an internet platform for anybody, no social media, and but we would get the stuff on mainstream TV, and that was a cool thing. And the stuff would air like often in 60 countries, and they do reruns, and it's a half-hour long show or a 1 hour long show, which was really good for the audience to get to know you, but also your sponsors, and there was ways to really get a lot out of it. So back to your question. Sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked here
No,
with
please carry
reading it
on.
back.
That's what it's all
But
about.
but so I went to probably over 70 countries over the years, and we went to some pretty remote places, from looking for headhunters in Borneo or an alien dwarf tribe in China.
No
And
way. Did you find
we
that?
uh, We got pretty close. We got like
Tell
shadowed by the Secret Service. We
tell
got
me more. Is this the
it's a
China
pretty
trip?
long story, yeah, but there's this mysterious tribe with little people with big heads, and apparently they have a DNA count from nowhere on this planet, blood group count, and the guys who were I've been connected to some of the guys in this ancient astronaut world, and I had some inside information, and anyway we got pretty close, and then they shut the door, and one of us admitted at the end of the trip, yes, this tribe exists, but none of your business.
Really? So it does
And
exist?
well, I got even contacted over 10 years later by the History Channel. They were doing a documentary on that tribe, and they told me that I was the closest to ever get to it or something. And it's a long story. It's really they would make a full podcast, but the the the
Yeah, but
talk,
you've got me so interested now.
yeah,
You've got to give us a
yeah.
little bit more. We got some
Well,
time.
well,
What are you allowed to tell me? Because it sounds like,
well. It's not that
I
it's not
mean,
allowed. We ended up empty-handed, but not literally, and we had all this information. And I happened to meet the top guy of the Chinese tourism board at a bike trade. There was a bike trade show in Chicago, and below was a travel show. And I went down there and collecting brochures about where could I do my next adventure, and I got to talk to this guy, and they agreed to co-sponsor our trip to China. So I put on the itinerary all these famous things, like the we went to Shaizang, the old capital where the giant Buddha is, and where the terracotta warriors are, and then like I put this little tribe that I knew from my other connection, this little village in there, which is not even on any maps. This village, and initially they said no problem, you can go there. They approved the whole itinerary, and a week or so before the trip they sent a message that everything is cool except that one little village, you can't go anymore, it's flooded. At the time they had these big floods in China, but the floods were 2,000 miles away from there, and I figured, we'll just deal with it when we get there. I can still like talk my way into it. And little did I know about Chinese bureaucracy at the time, that there's no changing plans once they made plans. So, but anyway, so we went there, and I kept pushing. Yeah, we still need to go to this village, and they said they always like were kind of vague about it, like no, we can't go, or yes, we try, and pushed us out and out, and the trip carried on. And as further we got into, as more we kind of talked to them, and I had nothing to lose. And I remember I told them all I knew about this little tribe of these. I think they were called Trogma people. Tropa was that tribe called, and what I all heard about the books and the people I talked to, and and as soon as I left the room, they grilled everybody in my group, like, what book is that? And the map I showed him, they looked who printed the map, and they were all like, and the guy was obviously from the Secret Service, shadowing us the whole time, and
whoa.
he was pretending he was with the tourism board, like kind of traveling with us. But at the end, they were like, he did say to me, there is, this tribe exists, but it's not here, and it's none of your business, and stop asking. And that was kind of, the end. So we didn't get to go, but the story goes on. And like I said, I was contacted by the History Channel, and somebody else told me a story of somebody who apparently ran into this tribe, and saw this person on this river, like this little gray person with a big head. So, but anyway, it's all a bit far fetched here. But anyway, I love
Well,
this
but
kind
hang
of
on.
stuff.
Yeah, but that's incredible. But tell me, if I look it up now on TV and internet, there's still not a show or too much documentation about the tribe, or now there is? Or
Still,
is it this
there's still not a whole lot. And it all started out.
really?
This was 100 years ago. A guy lived with that tribe. Apparently, they have all these weird tribes in China, and the government even moves them around, relocates them. But and there was these books from back in the 40s and stuff, and this guy says he got even married into this family, and they had a different blood count, and they were all like really interesting and different people, not really humans. And then like people knew about these reports, and then like in the 80s or 90s, this the Associated Press came out with this report that there's a tribe of little people that ride like folding bikes, and they have big heads, and apparently they all like deformed from mercury in the drinking water. And then some people were like, oh, wait a minute, this could be that tribe they were talking about in the 40s, the Tropa and all this. And there's these famous, it goes on and on. There's these
Yeah,
famous
yeah, yeah.
stone discs, the stone discs of Bayan Kaya Ula. And they like a record, and they are made out of the hardest possible stone material, not even from this planet. It's the composition stone that has grooves in it in a certain way and symbols, and it's some really mysterious, like a record really. And these stone discs are all connected with this tribe. So anyway, it's we don't know yet what it is, but it was fun
But I
chasing
mean,
it.
I hate the word conspiracy theory, but it does seem like there's some hard cover ups going on surrounding this stuff, that people don't want some of this information out there. And you almost got there because of the bike and your will for adventure. This is fascinating.
Yeah, and and the cool thing is that they don't feel, they think like, oh, there's this bike guy, he does a sports show, that's great for our country, for tourism, it's going to be all over TV. And they don't see you as a threat, because we did a similar thing in Egypt, and I got to go to the pyramids and go inside, and I interviewed the main guy, Sari Havasi, that silver-haired guy you always see on National Geographic, who basically has the golden key to everything in Egypt and had it always. And then all of a sudden, we also brought some mysterious stuff that wasn't mainstream. We talked about stuff that was like 2 years later, they opened up this secret tunnel in the pyramids, and we knew already about it and asked him. And when the subject came up, he all of a sudden go like, whoa, where does this come from? And anyway, and we talked about places inside the pyramid, like there's a shaft called the Unfinished Chamber. And at the time of the interview, he was very media savvy. He knew how to play us, but he allowed us access to that shaft, which, and then he immediately left after the interview. And then his guys were like, oh, we didn't have the key today for this shaft. And they said, oh, we come
Yeah,
back
right.
tomorrow. And then they were like, oh, you only had permission today, sorry, and all this stuff. But anyway, it was, again, we got there, and they didn't that we kind of got our foot in the door pretty deep. And before, like a normal archaeologist would have never gotten close to that Sai Havas, and we got to interview him because it was for American TV. So
And you're just some like extreme bike rider. They don't think you're gonna undercover any information on it. What
we
two
weren't any
things?
threat.
Yeah, not a threat. What's their mainstream media story of the pyramids? And number two, where do you think they came from?
You got to go to my website and
Yeah.
go
Okay.
to past adventures, and go to Egypt, and there's my Egypt story. But then there's a link, series, mysteries, and cover-ups about the Great Pyramids, and click on that. And I have it all written down, mainly stuff that I learned from books and theories and stuff. But there's a lot of
Amazing.
stuff that most people have never heard about the pyramids, and including this famous Gantenbrink shaft, which we talked about it, like I said, like 3 or 4 years before, they had this live opening of the shaft in front of, like worldwide. It was live TV, a live broadcast. So
But I mean, we're gonna point. I'll point people to the website in the show links and stuff. But I mean, I just think there's so many things you can't answer, even with science in this day and age. Like I was listening to on Rogan the other day, and they were talking about where the quarry is that they got some of these stones and the size of it. It doesn't make sense that they even could transport them to come and build the pyramid there.
yeah, it's often there is theories that they were basically poured, like they make a concrete basically, because they did in some of the blocks I have read in the past, they found like human hair, or they found in one block um, materials from different regions of Egypt in the same block, so
Really?
so there is those theories too, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, a bunch of slaves dragging those 40-ton rocks up to the top of a whatever 300 feet tall pyramid doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, but I mean, you've definitely got more knowledge than me. But I mean, it also leads to the thought of like a way more prehistoric civilization as well. You know, that begs those questions if you want to get deeper into it. But we're probably digressing on a mountain bike podcast. But I'm fascinated, and that's why I wanted to chat to you. It's like, yes, there's the mountain bike, but it's this vehicle that's taken you all over the world and allowed you to live out some of your passions, which you probably would have loved to go to some of these places anyway. And I have as well. I've been to
Yeah.
places like Iran, which I don't think I would have gone. Well, I know I wouldn't have
Wow.
gone without a bike.
I
And
haven't been brave enough to go there yet.
yeah, no, but you've been indoctrinated by living in the States. It was, yeah, that's probably a bit different when you come in on that passport. But it was fascinating, especially the people. Beautiful place, beautiful people, lovely food, and yeah, I mean, I count myself very lucky to be able to do that, and we get paid to do it as well, which is you got to almost pinch yourself.
Yeah, and it's those personal experiences, like you just said, the local people, to meet them and to share a moment of their life, to get invited in a hut for a cup of tea, and then initially they often can be very skeptical, and they look at you like another rich white guy who comes to their country, and they have no idea why. But then what's it's funny, then they see you ride the bike, and because they can all relate to a bike. They do have usually bikes, and then they see you do tricks and stuff, and then all of a sudden that question you ask half an hour earlier about going with your bike over that mountain pass behind their village doesn't sound that stupid to them anymore, and they get really enrolled, and then they open up, and then they ask you questions about your personal life. So do you have a wife, and how is life there? And those are the moments that I think are the most special from all these trips.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just I'll never forget a breakfast we had in Iran, and we stayed with the guide's friends in a very small sort of town, and we shared their tea, and we had a hubbly bubbly or a shisha pipe, which I know from my country as well. But the next morning they lit a fire, and on coals they had aubergine, and then they made some egg and tomato mix. I mean, they spent, and it was gentlemen that did this as well, and they were super proud to share it with these foreigners, and show them their sort of local cuisine. And I think it's those things that you just never forget. I mean, the riding was great, don't get me wrong, but those sort of memories you have with some of the people you meet.
Yeah, that's what makes travel so special. The different cultures and people, and to get to dive into their world for a moment.
And how many times have you sat with yourself and go, yeah, probably only a few more years of this, then it's probably over. I mean, at 57, that must have happened. I also sometimes think, I'm like, yeah, a few more years, might need to think of something else, and then a few more years go by, and you reinvent yourself, and you learn how to add value in different ways. How's that been for you?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time, and it's part of it. And it has to do with a lot of different factors. But sometimes you feel like there should be something else or not, and sometimes there's the constant change of things. But yeah, that happens all the time. You do have to reinvent yourself and go with the times, and understand and get creative again, and find the value. Like there's like there's like so many people eating off the pie now. Like I almost had the pie for myself in that kind of world, not outside of racing. The little pie that was outside of the racing pie, the big racing pie, I had it, for myself with a few people only to share. Now that pie, yeah, it has grown, but there's probably like at least 5,000 people trying to eat from that pie worldwide, who want to do a living one way or another, be it a free rider, or be it an adventurer, be it a guide or an influencer or a trials guy, or a dirt jumper, or all these people, trying to, eat from that pie. So the pie is getting smaller, and you have to find ways to prevail. And then sometimes these new trends creep up on all of us, and they all of a sudden overtake everything until the dust settles and people realize, well, maybe that was a little bit overrated. Maybe, Snapchat is not that important for our market, or whatever, or even Instagram. The whole influencer thing got to a point where, where I feel like the dust is settling now, and the real deals, the people who bring value, are the ones who are surviving and successful. And and I'm not saying that, a lot of influencers are really good too, and they're bringing a lot to the table, but there's also a lot of them who don't have much to offer. And I think these are the ones get weeded out. But it's the same with racing. Some guys, they win and they deliver above and beyond racing results, and they keep being sponsored, and others might struggle to have a ride. So yeah.
Yeah, so that was something we probably talked about offline. Like, you've seen so many different cycles of the sport, the bikes, the media. Okay, yeah, I mean, let's jump in. Like, how have you seen it changed, and where is it going?
um, well, yeah, it's, like, part of me used to be, or, I'm still proud of the fact that I had 500 front covers on a magazine. I mean, any pro mountain biker who lived in that era knows how hard it is to have 10 career covers. And I don't think there's many riders, of any, that have over 200, 250 covers. There's probably a handful. But so that was something I was proud of. But now print media is so irrelevant that people go like, dude, you're getting old. You live it, like, it's not like, wow, you did that in that world and you're still doing this. It's more like, if you would bring that up, it would really date you. And it's like, oh, we don't give a shit. But print is what built that whole foundation for me. Advertisements, the sponsors would actually spend money on athletes and influencers. Imagine that, guys. It wasn't all up to you to market yourself and them and their product. It's like they would actually put money into an advertisement campaign and make an image, and they would send you around, which, yeah, I know that still happens to a degree, but not for the majority of the people out there. And so it's it has changed a lot, and it will constantly change. And yeah, so print is one of the things, but I always try to make myself leverage what I do. I see so many people, they do a photo shoot, and then they go home and do another photo shoot tomorrow, and then they do another photo shoot next week, and it's like, and what's going to happen with those photos? Oh, this one magazine run it. And it's like, shit, if I do a photo shoot, I try to do it right, and I'm going to run it in 20 magazines, make a TV show out of it, use it on my website, give the photos to my sponsors so they can use them for ads, and really leverage it, and then making things that also has a lifespan. I think that was also a big advantage I've had. Like, you can watch one of my adventures from 10 years ago, and it's still relatively relevant. I mean, you might notice that, oh, these forks are pretty dated on that bike because that's what we rode like 10 years ago. But other than that, the riding and the experience and all that is still there. And so some of these TV shows I've done, they still airing 5, 10 years later, and they also opened me the door to get a little bit of mainstream media. It's pretty hard in mountain biking. I mean, some of the guys like Danny and Fabio achieved that, and some of the World Cup and Olympic stuff achieves that, and like Rampage. But other than that, it's pretty hard for athletes to get mainstream exposure. So all that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because back in the day, trials you could do in a small location. Mountain biking you couldn't. You needed to be out in the mountains. So that is quite a unique skill set you had, that you were able to leverage, and you've done a lot of mainstream stuff, like Olympic Games ceremonies, which to me is, it's the most mainstream sporting thing there is, and then starring in TV shows. Like, how does that come about? You you played yourself in Pacific Blue. I mean, I remember seeing the show.
Yeah, it was one of those last of these really corny Hollywood TV cop shows, and it was about the Santa Monica Bike Police. And there was a lot like Baywatch, except they were wearing more clothes. And and I living here near Los Angeles, we used to get the odd calls for commercials or auditions in Hollywood. And usually it was for commercials, sometimes for a little cameo or for a stunt in a film or series. But this was a full-on bike. It was all about the bike police in Santa Monica. So it was all about bike stuff, and they needed permanent stuntmen and people. And the first season, I did a lot of stunt work for them, which was really cool, and we did some really cool stuff. And then the second season, they switched to track bikes, and track had that horrible Y bike that was really really recognizable,
super recognizable. Yeah,
and at the time,
the Y glide, I think
GT and track were like, and I was like, I'm not gonna do stunts anymore, because even if I had a wig on and had looked like a female cop on a bike with like fake boobs and jumping the bike over something, people would still know by my style that, oh, that's Hans, he did that 270 off that, so. And I was kind of really busy with other stuff too, so I was kind of letting it go and said, I'm not going to do stunts on that Y bike. So then they gave me a part as myself in the show where I could be the Eastern European coach for the bike guy, and I would have always a rivalry with one of the cops, and we would try to outdo each other. And as much as you think it's easy to play yourself, if they give you a fake Eastern European accent and even structure the sentences in the script even more backwards than my English already is, it was sometimes actually not that easy to play yourself. But anyway, I had a few guest appearances in that, and that was pretty cool because as corny as that show was, it aired in over 100 countries, and I think it still airs in a few nowadays. But what's amazing is, Needles, is how many people I have met over the years who told me they started mountain biking because of that TV show. And that's kind
really
of cool. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So many. I would say I almost, when I'm out and about, I meet once a week or so, or every 2 weeks, I meet somebody who tells me their Pacific Blue story and how they got into biking because of that.
No ways. Yeah, I mean, I 100% remember the show. And I must have seen it on TV. It's not like I saw reruns on, anything. It was back when we were only watching TV. I still remember the bike because, you were on your GT, of course. And then I remember the Y Glide and some of those cheesy scenes where, you were like going up against the guy. Is the pay any good?
Yeah, you got Hollywood stunt rates,
What are we talking?
Stuntman, they probably like, the stunt rates back then, a day rate would be $800, but then you can get more money for, like you say, let's say you did a 360, you say, okay,
danger pay.
Yeah, for every 360 I get another $200 or so. And then I try to be the perfectionist, but you know how the stuntmen work. They do 10 on purpose that they don't pull off, so they get paid for 11, and then they pull the 11s off. I wouldn't play quite that game, but then you get also residuals on top of that, and for reruns. So it was some good money, but in my case, especially when I got to play myself, I got my sponsors front and center, in all over mainstream TV, and that was kind of, I hope they appreciated it. Who knows?
Well, I'm sure they did. Surely you had some bonuses or TV bonuses back then. I mean, I know magazine bonuses exist. Or was it a bit tough back then?
No, I just had, most of my deals were never bonus based. I just got my salary and didn't have to deal with all that, and didn't have to justify every social media story, and with numbers. People would just see the overall and the pure amount, of the stuff you've done. And at the time, I think people also didn't realize maybe how much of a ripple effect these shows had on people, and but it just added. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on that caught us, like, like stuff like that, or being in a big commercial, or being at the Olympics closing ceremony, or being involved with the first X Games. Those were all that stuff happened, and it was kind of just like normal, and
Yeah.
it's like I always say, like, there's a lot of parallels with Danny McCaskill's career and mine. And I remember when Danny's first video went viral. I think, when was that? In 2008, maybe, or 10, or probably 8. And he got phone calls from like David Letterman show and the New York Times, and he would just, oh no, I'm busy riding with the lads in Edinburgh this weekend. Like he saw this was just normal, and this would come all the time. It's like, no, dude, you don't get a New York Times interview or a David Letterman appearance. Like, nobody gets that other than Lance at the time.
Yeah.
So, but and that's how we were a bit back then too. So many things happened, and we sometimes didn't even know until years later how special it was or how cool it was. We were just going along and doing it.
Did he go on Letterman? Like, was he? How did you find out that they would call him? Like, are you in touch with him quite a lot, or would he call you for advice?
A little bit. We were just in touch, and I know he early hooked up with Tarek, who started managing him. Maybe, I don't know if he managed him then, but we were a little bit in touch, and the word just got out. Somebody told me that, and I don't think he went. I don't think he's ever went to Letterman, but he might have. But some other trials guys have been on there in the past, way before him. But and he's done his share of mainstream stuff, Danny, like big time, so no shortage for him. But he's in a league on his own, with only less than a handful of other guys. So if you're there, then you're laughing.
Yeah, it's super interesting that like, I mean, I grew up as a kid and we do a bit of trials, probably because of watching your stuff on the like the stairs at the back of the house, and then we'd go dirt jumping and stuff, and we do a bit of trials. But it was like, it's crazy how far trials mountain bike. I don't think it gets the credit it should, actually. If you think about how mainstream it gets, like a mountain bike, my mom would tell me about, hey, this guy's doing this weird video on jungle gyms or whatever it is, and it's Danny. I know exactly who she's talking about. And the
Yeah,
same would probably go for Fabio, like that snow video that I mean, he obviously done a lot of videos, but that was one of the bigger viral ones that launched him. And they're probably the modern day version, like you say, of you, of being able to hit the mainstream as well as the core audience of mountain biking, would you say?
yeah, and not to forget, they they going to the next levels of pushing the levels. Back in the days, what my level was, that level. And there was even a time I was cocky enough to say I write everything that anybody writes. Those days are long over, and now you find in every village across the world a couple kids that can do stuff that I could never do. But the thing is with those guys is, yeah, they had this appeal, this mainstream appeal, that the trials guys were always a bit the unwanted stepchild. That's how we felt back in the early 90s, when it was all about racing. Yes, it was all about cross country, then downhill, a little bit of slalom, and then there was the trials guys. But the trials guys were the guys who entertained everybody. We had our competition right near the pits, where everybody was watching. All the spectators had a beer in hand, and they loved it. It was just not the glamorous things. Partly, a lot of the early mountain biking team managers came from road cycling, and cross country was the closest to road cycling. So they kind of flocked in that direction a bit more. But like I remember, like you say, trials is a unique thing, and it opened a lot of doors. And a lot of fairly famous professional mountain bikers have a trials background. And I remember one year I was invited to Australia, to the Australian National Championships. I think it was 92. And GT did plan this promo tour with me. And at the same time, Oakley invited John Tomek. And John Tomek was the superstar of mountain biking. But I had the advantage. I could do some shows. I could go to a TV studio and hop down whatever and jump over this and that. And I ended and I happened to be on the first night there in kind of a David Letterman style TV show, and then the whole week I was like from one live TV show to the next, and nothing with John Tomek because nobody had any clue who Hans Rey was, and they didn't know either who John Tomek was. Mountain biking was too new; it was in Australia. But that Hans Rey guy, he could do something that we've never seen before. So I got to get go on TV, and that's kind of the advantage the trials guys have. They can take the sport outside of the race course and bring it to the people. Like in modern days, these urban freeride
I was
competitions and
gonna,
the urban downhills.
yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like the top guys are not going to the urban downhill races, but it is taking downhill mountain biking to the people, and maybe
Yeah,
from then they'll tune into World Cup racing and go from there. I was about to say the same thing. It's super interesting, and it is a similarity.
yeah, but you also run the risk that the World Cup downhiller might be left out of these public views, and these people are, there's a couple guys I don't even know their names who only do the urban downhills, and they might be better known in certain circles than Bruni and Minar because the people who haven't, like it's just like for a long time Americans didn't follow Formula One, and ever since the Race to Survive series, like everybody is now a Formula One fan and understands also the sport and the heritage and the characters and all that, and yeah, I feel like even the UCI World Cup should have at least one urban race on its schedule, just to mix it up. And
I was thinking that. Think I'm only going to suggest it because I'm not part of it because it's super dangerous.
oh yeah,
I mean, Slavik's crash in this last one, and he was going for the overall title, and Slavik's a four cross. You know Slavik, obviously,
yeah,
and he's one of the names you do know. But there are a lot of South American names, incredible street bike handlers, obviously crazy talent, and fair to say they wouldn't feature at a World Cup. So it would be cool to see if it was able to do it, but you would probably find some interesting names we don't know could say that they've won a World Cup, but you'd have that little asterisk, right? But I still think it would be cool if there was a way to do it. That would bring it a little bit more to the masses.
I agree. Just like you have in F1, you have the Monte Carlo race
Yeah,
course in the
true.
city. You can have one of those, and it doesn't have to be as gnarly as the race I watched yesterday in Mexico. Or I only watched one little clip, but it looked pretty gnarly. It can be it can be a bit, maybe have a little more dirt in it too. Find a city where it's not just staircases. So
Yeah, it's probably possible to make it a little bit more safe, not safe, but
yeah.
yeah, there are risks, and you probably have a lot of the top guys not featuring because of safety and things like that. So yeah, they might not like it, but me and you are sure going to vote for it.
Yeah, yeah. Make
We'll
the
have to,
hardline part of the World Cup too.
yeah. I've got Darkfist here in South Africa. We can say that we need to put Darkfist in as well. Really throw a cat amongst the pigeons, but that's the sort of, yeah. I mean, the sport of downhill, excuse me, is evolving, and we've got a lot of changes. But how have you seen the sport evolve? That was definitely a topic we wanted to chat about because it's so interesting to see it. Yes, you come from a trials background, but you raced all the disciplines, you ride all the bikes or have ridden them from cross country to taking a ski lift up and riding a downhill bike down. How
You're
have
talking
you
about
seen this the sport in general? Like, how have you seen it? This is going to be a weird analogy. You're like the David Attenborough of mountain biking. You've seen the sport evolve in front of your very eyes.
Yeah, I mean the sport, and the cool thing about people often talk about that golden era and the heydays, and what made it really cool is that nobody had expectations. Like
Okay.
we all went to a race or a event, and we went there to ride and have fun. And then some rider would show up we'd never seen before and who would smoke us all or would do really good, or there would be a new invention, a new suspension design, or even before suspension, another little part that nobody had seen before would try out. And some of them were really stupid and didn't go anywhere, but that was all part of it. And there was no money really in it per se at the very beginning, at least. So it wasn't all about that. So people were more friendlier. It was more like this group of camaraderie where it was not so result based, and I think that made it kind of cool. And then of course the bikes evolved a shitload, from, I mean, I remember full on rigid bikes, skinny little tires. I remember our team, they were sponsored by Michelin like early on with those horrible green tires they had. And the biggest, I think, was a 2.1. They might have had a 2.2. And I remember us saying, dude, we need bigger tires. Oh, no, not really, And then same with stems. We need shorter stems, like the norm were 130, 140, 150 stems. And us asking for a 100 or a 110 stem was like, you don't need that, just like roll your handlebars back, they would say, or, like, and the same with riser bars and every single thing. And then suspension slowly came in, and there was a lot of trial and error with that, and the disc brakes. Brakes are the most important thing on a trials bike, and we wrestled, it took a long time for disc brakes to become good. And even then they weren't necessarily great for trials, because disc brakes are designed to work into one direction, the rotation of you going forward. But on trials, when you hop, the brake has to work backwards too, the way you're hopping on the back wheel and standing on an edge. So all that, but yeah, technology, then event formats, and then the whole perception of the public, that people got into it and embraced it and accepted you as a rider, and didn't like give you the evil eye on the trail, like I know we still have conflict somewhere at places, but hey, it's gotten a lot better. And a lot of these organizations like People for Bikes in America or IMBA, they have done so much for educating people and to build bridges and to make it an overall better experience, to educate people about purpose-built trails. Like people, we would ride whatever trail or dirt road there was. Nobody ever asked, like it wasn't until early 90s that this guy in Wales, David Davis, who just got in the Hall of Fame last year for it, started building the first purpose-built mountain bike trails. And those were those trail centers in Wales that we all know about, Cody Bryan and whatever they all called. And then slowly people started building tracks with berms and stuff. And at the beginning, they were a little bit too hardcore, that only the hardcore guys could really experience the backside of a jump or the flow or the G-force or the, that was the next step. But at least we had purpose-built trails, and eventually we had to groom it down. And that's something you could easily learn from the ski industry. The ski resorts obviously are there to make money, and the money they make with the easy runs, with the family runs, with the blue runs. And we didn't have enough of those in mountain biking. So all those things, from trails to bikes to, and not at least the way we dress.
What do you think's like? It's probably tough. What's one of the best innovations on the bike for you?
On the bike, I've always said the dropper post.
Yeah,
I believe so, because
just to help a bike transform itself from a climbing bike to a descending bike with just like the push of a thumb.
Yeah, and the little bike club we have here in Laguna, the Rats, who are also in the Hall of Fame, but they were kind of the original free riders, and they would ride super steep stuff, and we would always have a quick release at least, or one of those high rides that Joe Breeze invented. It was a spring on your seat post that you could sit on, and it goes down, and then when you release it, it goes back up. And we would always do that, adjust the seat and ride super steep stuff. And when those seat posts finally came about, much later, I was definitely jumping on it, and even that was a tough sell. Even some of my friends who ride that steep stuff, it took them 2 years to adopt to it, and so many people, you don't need that, and then all of a sudden, I remember Wade Simmons once being on a trip with Richie and me in Nepal, and Richie and I had the posts on our bikes, those early Crank Brother ones. And Wade was like, you don't need that stuff. And like 2 days into the ride, when he heard us like 50 times a day click, go up and down our seat and play around on the side of the trail with stuff. He would like, I need one of those things. Hook me up, you guys, And so all these things, take time sometimes to evolve.
Yeah, but it's one thing like with the technology or like suspension forks getting better, but this is such a simple thing that you guys had to trial and error and figure out and go, huh, do we really need our seat this high? Like a simple thing like a seat being out the way, or you going, why is the bike handling so terribly? Should we try a shorter stem? Like, even when I was young, short stems existed, or shorter, not, not maybe not 50s at the time, but it came pretty quick. So even I was spoiled, and I started on a fully rigid bike at my first downhill race.
Yeah, old school. No, that's like Cully, Dave Cullinan and myself were the first guys I knew of who really like were talking about riser bars. And the thing is, back in those days in the late '80s, an expensive mountain bike would cost around $1,000, maybe 1,200 or so. And only the cheap bikes, the ones $600 and below, had these curved riser bars on them. But they were often not bent in the right way, and they were not wide enough and all that. But there would be the odd, weird, no-name model out there from some obscure brand that would be perfect. And we would ride those things, and they might have not even been like strong enough for what we were doing even then. And people would look at us and like, oh my God, your bike looks like a $500 bike, like it looks like cheesy or cheap, because you have the riser bars on. And why don't you just like, they didn't understand the sweep and the rise and how it would feel comfortable and give it a better feeling than those horrible straight bars. They literally had a piece of bamboo stick, like it wasn't bamboo obviously, but a straight bar, super narrow. I mean, in the 500s, like 500 millimeter kind of. So it was crazy.
Is that the crappiest thing from back in the day? Straight bars and narrow, or is there a crapper? What's something that you had to try, or your sponsor said, oh, this is the next best thing, and you're like, I'm not riding that, or we pay you to ride it? Is there anything that pops to mind?
The only thing is those, what was those called? Those Shimano air brakes or so, or air. Somebody who listens in must know more
Ah,
about it. It was these wheels. They were super complex and heavy, and they had these weird brake systems. But they were so heavy, it almost doubled the weight of your bike. The wheels, and it was before disc brakes, and it was like a mix between. I can barely
I
remember a
was
mix
it.
between a drum brake and a
Yeah, was it on
air.
on some of the Schwinn bikes? Or was that air shifting?
Maybe,
I
and
don't
maybe
remember. There
they
was
were
some
only
weird
around for
stuff.
one season, and they might have had a couple guys race with them, but that was something that didn't quite go.
What
I never
about the
had much
stem? The stem that had suspension in it or flexed.
the
The stem.
the flex stem, yeah, and the flex handlebars and the flex seat posts. They had all of that, but
That can't be good.
yeah, that was kind of sketchy. I was never, yeah, especially doing the trial stuff and front wheel hops. I wanted something solid where I can, you know, I mean, yes, we did it with front. We ended up riding with suspension forks when they first came out. People were very skeptical. They were like, "We don't really need that." Most mountain bikers would say, and then people weren't sure if they would be strong enough or maintenance friendly, and then there was also an added price for these forks. And I remember when I started riding them for my trial stuff and those first quadras, and I would do front wheel hops on them. I remember it was a pretty big selling point for them because like, look, he can do front wheel hops on those and they don't break. And it gave, I know a few people were like, oh, okay, maybe I give it a try. But there was a long time. There was so many things, and that's just how life is. You we all thought we could live maybe without a cell phone 10 years ago, right? When the first ones came out. And now it's like not gonna go back. So
No, but sometimes you probably wish you could go back.
yeah, that's true. That's why we have gravel bikes now. So it's like mountain biking in the 80s and 90s with a rigid
Yeah.
bike with skinny tires and a narrow handlebar.
I'll be dead honest. I don't know. I haven't got the bug of the gravel bike hasn't bitten me quite yet.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, so you don't have a gravel bike either, then? I
Oh no, I
take
have
it.
one, but I use it on
Okay.
the road.
But you are a dinosaur. I saw PD chirped you on your Instagram. What do
What do you
you
say?
No, I don't know. I think you were saying I think you hopped over like a prehistoric rock or something in your driveway or made a joke
Oh,
about. And then he said something about but the person on the bike is also prehistoric.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. But he
Yeah, of
gets to
course.
chirpy because he's done some projects with you
Well,
and
it's true. It's true.
hey, we're all getting old. But I mean, you seem to embrace that. Is there ever times when like what does the future hold for you? Like is there a do you retire or not? Like how does that look?
Yeah, I mean, I I don't, I'm just cruising along still, like, I mean, there was a couple things I just wanted to say and they left my mind already. But the the bottom line is it's like I'm still having fun and it's a cool and I find new niches and new ways where I can prevail or be at least different enough from most everybody. And I feel like I can still inspire people to write, which is a big motivator. And ultimately, when I look out and I look at some of these billionaires out there, all they want to do, a lot of them, is have a lifestyle like some of us pro riders, be able to do our hobby and job and travel to cool places and ride with friends and have fun. And I get to do that. It might not be a billionaire from it, but I've done all right, and I'm still having fun. And I think that's worth a lot. And for the long time, I was always thinking, okay, so my plan B is eventually I become a marketing guy for one of my sponsors. I understand that. I have a good feeling. I think I could be a good addition. And like about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I realized, oh shit, I'm over 50 now. Nobody wants a 50-year-old marketing guy. I guess that plan is out the window. Even though I might still would be able to teach him a thing or two, but it's all about people. I think put too much emphasis on age, and age is the one single thing none of us can change. So why
Yeah.
fight it? Why deny it? Why, that's like there's a lot of other things I can change in life or in my past, but age is that's just what it is. It all comes and goes every day, every night, every plant, every animal, and pretty much every human, as for now at least.
But I mean, you get to speak to that. I mean, I'm 38, if memory serves me correct, turning 39.
All
Don't
right.
feel it. Definitely
Wow,
look
you
it, but I
you're
don't
still in the
feel it, right?
30s. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm catching you though, slowly but surely. But you get to tell me, like, does it catch up on you a little bit? Like, do you still feel as sort of young on when you do certain things as you did when you were 20s, 30s?
No, I can feel the age now. I didn't for a long time. And for a long time I was thinking, oh my God, by the time I hit 40, I'm probably not gonna get out of bed and I'm gonna be hurting and all the abuse, the stuff we did on these rigid bikes with flat landings and all that stuff. But I all the way through 50, like, I mean, one of my biggest trips was when the one I'm probably most proud of and the hardest was when we climbed Mount Kenya and Kilimanjaro back to back. That was really tough and that was when I was 50. And in the last few years, especially the trials riding, it's physically so hard. When I was young, I would be out there all day long riding 6, 7 hours, and it was just like normal. And you kind of took it for granted the fitness you've had, because now I do like 10 back wheel hops and I get out of breath, and you realize, and then with that you're not as flexible anymore, or your reactions are not as quick anymore, and then you ride much less. I still ride trials, but less. But that also, then you lose your timing or your confidence. You always have to rebuild that confidence again. It's just like I bet it's not different for a downhill, or if you hit big jumps and then you haven't hit a big jump in a year, you want to build up your confidence again, even though you can still do it. And so anyway, so yes, I do feel the age, but at the same time, you don't have to try to match what the top guys do. I can find my own niches still, where I can still actually do pretty good and prevail, or do something that's at least meaningful and inspiring. And that's what I try to focus on these days, not to be the most extreme guy anymore, or do stuff that nobody else can do.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, not we haven't chatted for a while or crossed paths at some events, and then you lose touch. And, oh, Hans is still doing it, and I don't get to see all your content. You don't get to see all mine. You're sort of sometimes in your own niche. But the more I speak to you, I go, no, but this makes sense that you're still in the sport, because some of your fan base is also getting older, and maybe if you step away, they might go, oh, well, Hans isn't riding anymore. Must be an age thing. But you're here living proof that at 57 you're now still a professional cyclist. So why can't someone be just a cyclist, or a mountain biker, or get that e-bike? And we're seeing a lot more of that. And do you think also a lot of you've had to work a lot on your ego? Like with age, you realize, okay, I can't do certain things, and that's okay, right? Have you had sort of that sort of reflection?
Yeah, but yes, you have to deal with that, and sometimes you you have to leave that at the doorstep. You have to embrace the new generations. I mean, I was one of the first guys at the time tweeting about Danny McCaskill's first video. And because people were saying for years, who's going to be the next Hans Rey? And it wasn't just the guy who happened to beat me at the last competition. It was like, who's going to take it to the next level? And I mean, Danny didn't just take it to the next level. He took it like a few notches up. But you you have to, yeah, you just have to be fine. Like, there was a time, and it might sound a bit weird, but you felt like Billy the Kid. Everybody want to draw you and see if they faster with you on the revolver. And wherever you went, like, the local kids would come out, hey, look, we have this canyon gap, or we have this trials line, or we have this, and Joe Smith did it from our local club. Can you do it? And you get to the point where you go like, let Joe Smith have it. Like, I I cannot, like, like, take every challenge on, like, and it was with that, not just with the extreme stuff, even with the endurance stuff. You sometimes ride, and some average guy, like, is fitter than you, like, even a guy you might work for like, beats you up the hill, and it's like, well, I never got paid because I was fast. And so get off my back.
But
So
it's still it still must be draining, when you think you can maybe have it. So I mean, mentally, it's still a challenge to go through those different phases, right?
oh yeah, and it's always stressful still, and also with the sponsors, and make them understand it. And especially in the last few years, there's a whole new, the world has changed, not just with politics and everything else, but there is literally a new generation moved in, and they have different values and different objectives of their job, and the standards, and how it's done, and what counts. And sometimes they may or may not look at the big picture. They just look what's in front of them, or what their boss is asking for, or what gets them home early, or whatever. And they probably also see a lot of things that I don't see, and I try to learn those things and understand their goals, so I can keep working with them and deliver results that mean something to them, and not results where, well, we don't really care about all that stuff, we only care about this stuff. So that's the case, then I'll focus a bit more on the stuff you care about, but for better or worse.
Yeah, sponsorship certainly has evolved as well with mainstream, well, the internet being so mainstream and the medium we misuse. And do you have, like, I have a little bit of anxiety, like, we're kind of contract workers, right? So at the end of a contract cycle, even if you deliver, like you said, sometimes objective change, marketing, managers change roles. I don't think people outside the industry or outside being sponsored would understand. They wouldn't sympathize because it sounds like I'm complaining. But I mean, you can probably understand like more than most because you've been in it so long. Is you build up a certain level of anxiety? Like, okay, we're in a 2-year cycle. Hopefully, we renew. Here's what I've given, but it's quite tough.
No, it is. It is stressful, and and you have to constantly throw wood in the fire, and then it's not done with that, like your work task expands. We didn't have to, like all of a sudden now, besides racing and me training, uh, and then I organized these trial shows, and the next thing I organized an adventure trip. But I often produced those trips. I did all the research. I found the money. I find the film crew that has connections maybe to a TV distribution company. And then when the magazines comes out, I would work with the photographers. They would help too, but we would distribute. We would contact all the magazines. Hey, would you want to run this story? And you would do all this stuff. And the next thing is they want you to have a website. And I was one of the first to have a website. And then the next thing is there's the social media stuff. There's Facebook and Twitter. And do we really need this or for work or and MySpace and all these things and the old things are still all there, and they still want you to also test product for them and come and do personal appearances and consult and the workload expands, and often without a pay increase or and so there's always new things, and now they want you to yeah. So anyway, it's a now you have to provide the photos. You don't even get a photographer anymore. We need photos of you and for free and video content on a weekly basis. And who's going to shoot all that? Who's going to edit it? Who's going to, who's going to make sure? I mean, you cannot do it all on a selfie mode, So yeah, the job evolves and the tasks evolve, but it's it's stressful sometimes. It's not easy, and that's why not so many people, maybe necessarily last. Or they
Yeah,
get
maybe
smart and
the
find a job that pays real money.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, the longevity isn't for everyone because it comes with a certain level of definitely emotional stress as well with it, and that's tough to. We've talked about it in ad nauseum in other podcasts, but yes, no job is guaranteed, but certain career paths are pretty guaranteed. Once you have a certain level of experience and you don't f up too badly, you can probably find a job. The pay might change a little bit, but once you're an accountant, you're an accountant. If you're a certified one, as well as a psychologist or a doctor, and if you keep up your knowledge, you can definitely stay in that industry. But sports are
Yeah.
just eats you up and spits you out.
Well, people were used to athletes to just really do it. I remember when I turned around 30, 32, it's like people were kept saying more often, hey, so it's about time to retire, right? Because the average rider would retire at 32. The one guy I looked up to who didn't retire was Ned Overhand. He still won a XC World Cup at 40. And I saw other sports like Lord Hamilton or Robbie Nash or rock climbers who would carry on and find ways, and I would try to mimic that. Yeah. So but and then but back to the age thing, people always say like I think people put too much emphasis on the age thing, and sometimes it actually works against me because you just get that stamp. Yeah, but he's a freaking old guy. But nobody looks at the fact. Yeah, but he doesn't. He not only like the guys who buy the $5,000 or $10,000 bikes are not the 20-year-old guys. They are like their fathers or the parents buy the bike
Yeah,
for them or the father buy it for themselves. But you also, like you said, you for me, what keeps me in the game is you inspire not only riders. There is people, like you said earlier, who said, hey, I used to ride back in the 90s and I haven't ridden a bike because I had kids and a business, but now I'm riding again and I'm 5 years younger than you. When I saw that you still ride, I started riding too, but I think what a couple guys told me, younger guys, it gives them hope that they maybe have a longer career, guys like who are following, like trying to be professional riders, and they now come to realize it doesn't have to be over after 5 years. If they're smart and creative, and you see so many guys now who carve themselves a niche or a path with a way where they can do it for a long time. It's not like limited to the peak of their career in terms of how good or fast they can ride. They can keep their YouTube channel going forever, or they can evolve into other sports and other ways, and keep being part of this whole industry, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring. And I think you've said an interesting thing there. And it's something I think about as well. Is, excuse me, is people could say your age, you retired a while ago and you're getting on. But, well, what are we doing? We're trying to inspire people and leave the sport hopefully better than we found it. And you've definitely done that, hands down. And that is a goal of mine as well. So I thank you, because
Thank
sometimes
you.
I think, fuck, Hans is old. What is he still doing? But then understanding your thought process, and that's why I thought this would be interesting to chat, because it is inspiring me to go, yeah, well, screw the age. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still hopefully inspiring guys through my local bike shop that we go ride on the trails just out the back, or when I go on a trip and I'm in Europe and we produce some content to show you how cool these new bikes are, like you said, because hopefully the guy that can afford it or wants the new bling bling stuff, he goes out and he buys it.
Fun has no expiry date.
I like that.
You can still have fun when you're 60, 70, or 80, I believe, or I hope.
I don't know. You're gonna hopefully get there before me. Well, factually, you will.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I raced against Lopes when he was definitely getting on, and it sort of motivated me to go fast, and I think it motivated him, to be the old guy, for lack of a better term, and smoke the youngins. And I think that's a huge motivating factor for Greg. Yes, he's so competitive, but when he needs a little bit of that extra motivation, we're like, right, be pretty cool if I smoke some of these young guys, because I'm not meant to on
Yeah,
paper.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Some of those racers, I have to say, heads off, like how they have the will to win. That's the single most important thing. And to have that after all these years, like that's what a lot of people are happy with: one world championship. They don't need to do a Kelly Slater, and to still have it in you that you maybe want to win a 12th world championship title. Yes, there's other records to chase, the most and stuff, but it takes a lot, and not get distracted with all the fame and money that comes with some of these guys, at that level. It's easy to get distracted from, what you should do, in order to stay on the top of the podium.
Yeah, like how easy would it to be complacent? I just think distraction's one thing, but just to be like, well, I've got so much money. Why do I want to get up early and go to the gym and put myself through this pain? Because you have to have that delayed gratification to have a chance at a title. So
Yeah,
it takes a special human, like a Jordan, a Slater, a Greg, I think, to stay at the top of your game.
yeah, that there's a difference between a champion and a whatever you want to call that next level above it, and like maybe that's like the real definition of a legend, for somebody who can really prove it over a long time and across the whole field, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like in our sport, a PD that just never gave up.
Yeah.
I think that was so cool. You've obviously got close to him, Hans. What would you want to be known for in your career or in your life now that you've got more experience than just a career and the accolades?
I don't know, man. There's so many things that come together, and it's hard to put it into one sentence or to narrow it down to one thing. But I always like the fact that I could inspire people, and I that's the one thing about the social media. I get to hear these stories now from people, videos you did like 30 years ago. people still remember every single one-liner in there, as dumb and stupid as they might have been. And they took something from it that inspired them, and they still think about it today. When you hear these stories of how they started because of this or that, and how they're still doing it, that's a nice thing to take from it all.
I've got on the tip of my tongue some of these one-liners. Please tell me you've got some that you can remind me.
Yeah,
You have
man.
to. Yes.
Yeah, man. Jamaica, man. Island in the Sun, or fucking uh, Hunch and Spew from the Tread movie with Greg Herbold, and oh gosh, I can't think of them right now, but from
I've got a few. I
this is the
definitely saw a lot of
my
these
cosmic
movies.
crystal, that communicates with the aliens and on my deck, or I don't know. Everybody else remembers better. But yeah, there was just stupid stuff he would say to the camera, but people would literally like remember them and repeat them. So
So what sort of trips have you got coming up, or what do you want to still achieve? Like you said, it's so difficult to find a unique location these days.
yeah, that's kind of why I started to go to all the most remote places I could think of, or and do, and like I said, the world's getting small in that way, especially doing stuff that people can relate to. If you just traverse a random mountain range in Pakistan, it's hard to relate to the average person. As much as the film might be an incredible adventure, you're in the middle of nowhere, but it's so much easier to say I climbed Mount Fuji or Kilimanjaro, or go to Machu Picchu or so. But so that's why I kind of drifted to these urban adventures, and that was really fun to see these big cities and traverse them. And we usually pick these huge metropolitan cities that have incredible nature around them. But then you not only see this nature and this world class mountain biking on the edge of the city, but then you dive into the city, and there we could use the e-bikes and see all these different neighborhoods, from the famous places to the less known neighborhoods or the sketchy neighborhoods, and show the whole culture. And it was the best way to explore these cities. And so we did trips. I did a bunch of trips like that, and I want to do next year another one of my urban adventures. And then I work with just like other little stuff, a lot of little e-bike projects. I'm working on a film with Shimano for this year, and Jack Carsey and myself, he's a 10-time trials world champion, and he can ride an e-bike. Oh my God, it's pretty crazy. But we're thinking about doing a little film project together. And then I have a new resort partner in Switzerland, This and Tis Acid Rune, that's in near the Gotthard Mountain in central Switzerland. And I'm gonna work with them and do some projects there. So yeah, I'll keep busy. I'll keep it global, internationally. I jet set back and forth. I have a second home in England with my wife. She's from there, and so sometimes we in California, sometimes in England, and yeah, we'll just keep posting, influencing people.
Influencing, what a terrible word. But yeah, keep inspiring. I think we'll
Yeah,
let you with that one. And
thanks, bro.
is it your charity? You part of the charity?
No, it's my wife's and mine. We started it together. We still run it single-handedly, all volunteer-based, and it's a non-profit called Wheels for Life. We give bikes to people in need of transportation in developing countries. Done a lot of projects, most of them, but not all. Most of them on your continent, especially in Eastern Africa, in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya,
Amazing.
Malawi, and but like 32 countries. We're giving away 16,000 bikes. Often the kids have to walk to school for like 10 miles because they don't have public transportation, or they don't have a bike or anything. So they have to walk, and then they have to come home and walk another 2 miles to fetch water and carry 20 gallons of water back to their hut. And or people bring their food to the market on the bike, and yeah, all kinds of ways. Bikes can really be a game changer for some of these people, and some of these people initially I met them on my travels and see how the bikes had a completely different meaning than for me. For us, it was a sports object, a toy,
Yeah.
and for them, having a bike or not can be life changing, and can be it can be the tool that gets you out of that vicious poverty cycle. And so that's what we've been doing.
Man, that's amazing to hear it. I'm definitely going to link to it in the show notes. And I've been supporting an ambassador for a charity here called Pedal Project. And also, they're using the bike holistically to help kids affected by traumatic events, either that they've directly had or seen. Because a lot of these kids are before the age of 6 are having 3 or 4 traumatic events, which can then lead to really tough emotional issues, and they're really on the back foot. Anyway, they're using the bike to get them out to trails and the mountains, just to get them out in nature. And if you think about how lucky we were, we just went racing and we didn't even know the effect we had, right? Just being in nature. Yes, it was this competition thing, but being away from the distractions and trauma, I think we're so lucky. So to hear you talk about that made me think of that, on how simple a bike is, how life changing it can actually be.
How powerful it is. Yeah, bikes
Yeah.
are super powerful, and there's a lot of different ways to enjoy them and ride them and have benefits from them. So yeah, yeah, good for you. Keep on going. All these things are good.
No, Will, I'll send you the info on it, and I'm going to link to yours, and I'll chat to my guy to check out yours. Maybe there's some synergy at some point when you come down to the African continent. You'll have to let me know when you're down, or invite you to Cape Town again. I know you. Did you end up riding down Table Mountain, or
um
what was that like? You did some
no,
trial stuff down there. What was that?
yeah, we rode at Lion's Head, and we rode at a bunch of different places. I always wanted to ride Clip Gorge, off Table Mountain, which is a pretty gnarly hiking trail
Yeah,
that
yeah,
goes
yeah.
down the front side. And I never got to do it. We tried to poach it once. It's pretty illegal for bikers, and something happened that the trail randomly was completely closed for. There had something happened that morning, and I think we never got to go back. So, but yeah, that um, I think yeah, we were on top there with bikes. Though we shot some photos on top with bikes and maybe right down the backside. But yeah,
You must see how much trail network there is now. I mean, I could take you
really,
riding a different trail network for 2 3 weeks, and we wouldn't do all. There's so many kilometers, professional built,
really,
marked. Yeah, the trail centers you can ride. So if you look down from Table Mountain, left is the Signal Hill. You legally can ride around that now, and then over the left side there's a trail, beautiful trail in Camps Bay. I'll have to send you some links, but yeah, I think there's going to be an offline project going with
could be
me
an
and you.
urban
We'll have to get you
adventure.
out. Yeah, oh, huge urban adventure for sure. It'll be cool to host you.
Yeah,
But
get it.
Hans,
Yeah.
I this has been great. Like I said, I've lost touch with you as well, and I'm like, yeah, what's that old fart still doing? But now I'm seeing you. You're still loving it. You're inspiring people. So if there's anything we missed, they can follow you, I guess, on Instagram. Are you on TikTok?
We didn't miss anything. We talked about it all. No, I'm not doing TikTok. I had to draw the line somewhere. I'm
Me
doing
too.
Instagram. I'm
Me
doing
too.
Instagram. I'm doing Facebook. I'm doing YouTube channel with a lot of not only my old stuff but also new stuff. And my Twitter account got hijacked, and that's gone now. So that's the goner. But so yeah, you can find me there or on my website. As always, actually, I keep it updated. So
Wicked. Well, folks, this was Moving the Needle podcast. Just got one request. If you like the show, give it a follow or share it with a friend. And that was Hans No Way Ray. What a special episode. So send him a direct message. Check what he's up to. Get inspired. Till the next one. Peace.